30 years since the establishment of dialogue relations between China and the ASEAN nations. Now, relations have been upgraded to comprehensive strategic partnership after the summit that was held between China and the ASEAN nations. This despite difficulties between Beijing and Southeast Asian nations that have been struggling to keep their sovereignty and territorial integrity intact amid Chinese aggression. It did come as a surprise that President Xi Jinping said China would never seek hegemony or bully smaller nations. Needless to say, this comment of his should be taken with more than a pinch of salt. There is a lot of doublespeak there.
The Association of Southeast Asian Nations said it had agreed with China to upgrade their relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership a day after reaching a similar deal with Australia. Australia's elevated partnership is a symbolic win in the race against Beijing to secure the first such deal with the Southeast Asia region, which has become a strategic battleground between Beijing and Washington.
We have also made progress with regard to our external relations. I'm especially pleased that ASEAN has agreed to establish comprehensive strategic partnership with both Australia and China.
The world is wary over the increased cooperation between China and the ASEAN nations despite the growing aggression in the maritime space of the region. But Chinese President Xi Jinping called the China-ASEAN strategic partnership a new milestone in the history of the relations. President Xi Jinping told ASEAN that China is a good neighbor as he pledged $1.5 billion to help the pandemic control and economic recovery.
Let us work hand in hand to build on what has been achieved and work towards a closer China-ASEAN community with a shared future and make our region and the world even more prosperous and beautiful.
While promises were being made on the one hand, violations were taking place on the other. Altercation between the Philippines and China in the South China Sea. 3 Chinese Coast Guard vessels blocked and used water cannon on resupply boats headed towards Second Thomas Shoal, which is locally known as Ongyun Shoal. China's assertion of sovereignty over the South China Sea has set it against ASEAN members Vietnam and the Philippines, while Brunei, Taiwan and Malaysia also lay claims to parts. And Filipino leader did not miss the opportunity to highlight that at the summit meeting.
We abhor the recent event in the Ayungin Shoal and view with grave concern other similar development. This does not speak well of the relations between our nations and partnership.
Beijing's ties with the region are complicated by South China Sea dispute and competing Indo-Pacific strategies of US and EU. Despite the marked aggression, ASEAN Plus 5 signed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which will come into force beginning of 2022. The RCEP includes 3 of the world's major economies, China, Japan and South Korea, as well as Australia and New Zealand. It seems like the nations have put their differences in strategic economic interests in 2 different silos. President Xi and leaders of the ASEAN countries reached 8 major consensus points. Advance ASEAN-China cooperation in all fields, which contributes to the building of an open, inclusive and sustainable region. Reaffirm the importance of maintaining ASEAN centrality in the evolving regional architecture. Enhance ASEAN-China cooperation in the post-pandemic era for mutual benefit and long-time sustainable development. Advance comprehensive collaboration and enhance mutual trust, deepen political and security cooperation, including through ASEAN-led dialogue platforms and mechanisms to maintain peace and stability in the region. Reaffirm mutual respect for each other's independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity in accordance with international law and the principles of non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries. Reaffirming ASEAN countries' adherence to One China policy. maintain frequent high-level exchanges and policy communication, strengthen defense exchanges and security cooperation. While there isn't a doubt that China's influence in Southeast Asia region has increased manifold, the tensions have also increased, with many finding support from the West. Despite that, trade between China and the ASEAN has skyrocketed by 85 times since the two sides established their dialogue relations in 1991. Since 2009, China has remained ASEAN's largest trading partner for 12 consecutive years, while in 2020, ASEAN also became China's largest trading partner.
China must remain committed to the early conclusion of the effective and substantive Code of Conduct in the South China Sea. This is simply no other way out of this colossal problem but the rule of law.
Xi Jinping is riding the tiger of nationalism, and if he does not get off, the tiger will eat him. Therefore, the hard line on Taiwan, South and East China Seas, and the other territorial claims.
China's involvement in South Asian nations, China's involvement in the polities, the economy, the society is increasingly become a concern world over. There is a new report funded by the State Department, but also contrary to many reports that we've seen earlier, some of the aspects of the report are quite similar to what we've seen in the past, but there are some aspects that vary. I'm being joined by the author of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace report on China's influence in South Asia. Deep Pal, many thanks for joining us here on India Today. Deep, you took in 4 countries, focused on 4 countries, looked at the vulnerabilities, and then wrote this report as to how China is influencing these countries. Let me begin with one huge aspect that I'd like to focus on, which is the Chinese debt trap. Now, there have been a lot of reports that keep talking about and speaking of Chinese debt traps in countries, South Asian nations like Sri Lanka, the Maldives, now also increasingly Nepal. But you say there is no such thing as a debt trap. What do you mean by that, if you could elaborate?
Right. Thanks for having me, Geeta. Pleasure to be here. So what I mean by the fact that there is no debt trap in South Asia yet, there's a very important caveat. I say that there is no debt trap yet, which basically means that the way that things are, they could devolve into a debt trap. And for every country that is interested in the region, whether they be India or the United States or any of their strategic allies and partners, the question is to figure out how to avoid that possibility. Now, what do I mean when I say there is no debt trap? While working on the report, we went through as much as publicly available data that we could find on how the various projects, whether they are being built by China or being built by these countries or being built by other countries or other companies in these countries, to figure out the pattern of funding. And what comes across is very clear. Now, you mentioned Sri Lanka. With Sri Lanka, if you look at the debt to GDP ratio, about less than 10% as of 2019 was owed to the Chinese. There are multilateral organizations, institutions that Sri Lanka owes far more of its debt to. So is there a debt problem in Sri Lanka? Absolutely. Is that a Chinese debt trap? No, not yet. Now, here's the thing. The Sri Lankan economy does need help and will need help going forward. Is there a possibility that this could devolve into a Chinese debt trap? It will, if other partners, other multilateral institutions, other companies, other organizations, other countries don't find a way to maybe lend to Sri Lanka or provide assistance, financial assistance to Sri Lanka in terms that are more attractive to them than is for the money that's coming from China. So that is exactly what one has to look out for. The Chinese debt trap is something that has been seen in other parts of the world. It's not reached South Asia in the same way. You talked about Nepal, for example. Again, in our study, we found that all of these countries, be it Bangladesh, be it Nepal, they are very careful in looking at the terms of financing that are available to us. and then they go forward and choose the kind of financing that works for them best. Nepal, for example, over the last 2 years, their COVID assistance has come entirely from the World Bank and other multilateral organizations. Not the aid material, not the PP kits or testing kits or vaccines and other things, but the money, the cash that they have borrowed has come from World Bank and other multilateral organizations and not China. And we spoke to people in Nepal about this. We spoke to people who work in the government about this. And they said, look, eventually it has to be something that makes financially sense to us. Nepal, if you look at their projects, they prefer grants over loans, whether they're commercial loans or soft loans. Bangladesh, they prefer soft loans over commercial loans. There have been instances where Bangladesh has decided not to go with a deep sea port that was being built by China, financed by China, and go instead with a port that Japan is going to help them build, a little distance away from the previous project, because the terms of the money lent to them were far more attractive. So that is the kind of measures, of steps. If we see more of those in these South Asian countries, we could perhaps avoid the very real and looming threat of a debt trap, which isn't quite here, but can be.
Ukraine and its ally, the United States of America, are now concerned about intelligence gathering that reveal Russian military buildup across the Ukrainian border. The intel report suggests that Russia could attack or invade Ukraine as early as January next year. Putin administration, however, calls it a sham and has warned Ukraine not to aggravate the situation. The two countries share a checkered history, but the question is, will Ukraine face the same situation it did in 2014? Here's a report.
Are Russia and Ukraine on the brink of a war? Russian troop movements near Ukraine have drawn concerns from Kyiv and the United States that it might be considering attacking its neighbor. Ukrainian Defense Agency's intelligence state that Moscow has deployed 92,000 troops around its border and is preparing for an attack at the earliest in 2022. United States too shared the intelligence along with the maps with European allies that show the buildup of Russian troops and artillery to prepare for the Ukrainian invasion. Reports by US intelligence also show that there can be an exponential rise in disinformation targeting Kyiv and that Moscow has recruited agents to destabilize Ukraine.
We don't know what President Putin's intentions are, but we do know what's happened in the past. We do know the playbook of trying to cite some illusory provocation from Ukraine or any other country and then using that as an excuse to do what Russia is planning to do all along. And so, as a result of what we've seen, as a result of that history, we've been in very close consultation with partners throughout Europe.
Taking the warning seriously, the Ukrainian ally United States is gearing up for the future invasion. Biden administration is weighing in the options and sending military advisors and weaponry to Ukraine. Moscow, on the other side, says it can deploy its troops across its territories as it pleases and denied the threat to anyone. Russia further accused NATO and Ukraine of whipping up tensions.
Россия не вынашивает никаких агрессивных планов. И совершенно неправильно заявлять об обратном. И совершенно неправильно любые перемещения вооруженных сил Российской Федерации, разумеется, это то, к чему мы относимся крайне негативно, мы не раз об этом говорили. Но, опять же, считаем это незаконным, неправильным.
So why is the Ukraine invasion being seen as a game changer for Putin? Russian territory will expand with its invasion of Ukraine. Moscow will get an access to the Black Sea, which will eliminate the presence of its arch nemesis, United States, in the region. Russia will further be able to save on the expenses it made on proxy war in Donbas post-2014. And finally, there will be an economic ramp-up for Russia as it will get better access to the routes for trade in European countries. Several NATO members, including the UK and the United States, have committed to protect Ukraine's territorial integrity.
We are very close allies of Ukraine, and we are working with our partners in NATO, but also directly with Ukraine to make sure that they are fully supported.
And if Russia were to attack, what would the UK?
Well, I think that would be a grave mistake from Russia.
Top generals from Russia and United States spoke over the phone this week. But there has not been any breakthrough yet.
Now, in some disturbing news, a new wave of COVID-19 has engulfed Europe, with countries recording a high rate or surge in COVID-19 cases. Countries are responding by imposing partial lockdowns and tougher restrictions for the unvaccinated. Countries like the United Kingdom, Austria, Germany, France, who have a higher rate of vaccination, have also shown rise in COVID-19 cases. The World Health Organization has also expressed concerns over the surge in the continent and has also said that there could be 500,000 more deaths by February. Here's a report.
Europe is reeling under the grip of a cataclysmic fourth wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 cases are skyrocketing in countries across Europe. Germany has reported over 65,000 COVID-19 infections in a single day. Austria has imposed a complete lockdown from November 22nd to control the spread of the virus. Hospitals in the Netherlands are transporting COVID-19 patients across the border to Germany. Hungary has crossed the grim milestone of 1 million cumulative COVID-19 cases. And in the United Kingdom, children are among the worst affected. Following a sharp surge in cases, Germany has forced lockdown restrictions on over 9 million citizens. The German health minister made a dire statement indicating the magnitude of the COVID-19 pandemic ravaging Europe.
Probably by the end of this winter, pretty much everyone in Germany, it has sometimes been said, somewhat cynically, will have been vaccinated, recovered or died. But it's true. With the highly contagious Delta variant, this is very, very likely.
Austria has imposed its fourth lockdown since the start of the pandemic, having reported over 98,000 cases in the past week. The cumulative COVID-19 cases in Hungary have surpassed 1 million, with a single-day spike of over 12,000 cases. Sharp spikes in COVID-19 cases have also been reported in Netherlands and Belgium. The Netherlands has reported a staggering 153,957 new cases in the last 7 days, indicating a 39% rise in COVID-19 cases. COVID-19 cases are skyrocketing in France, with over 30,000 cases being reported in a single day. In spite of 70% of the French population being vaccinated, France has clocked over 14,000 COVID-19 infections in the last week.
Today we are going to announce 30,000 COVID cases over the last 24 hours. It is a major increase in infections that shows, if that was needed in any way, that we are indeed in the midst of a fifth wave of the epidemic. It is therefore urgent to get vaccinated.
Across the European mainland, United Kingdom has witnessed daily spike of over 30,000 cases in the past 7 days. The sharp rise in cases continues in spite of 80% vaccination rates in the country. The COVID-19 pandemic in Russia has spiraled into a full-blown crisis. The country has reported more than 1,200 deaths and over 240,000 cases in the last 7 days. The rising trends of COVID-19 cases have the World Health Organization worried. Experts say the vicious cycle of vaccine hesitancy, breakthrough infections and the Delta variant might wreak havoc in Europe over the winter months.
That's all in this edition of World Today. Thank you for watching. News and updates do continue on the other side. Stay tuned to India Today.